Okay, let's dig into this. We've got, well, quite a story laid out in these notes about a boy who was alone, maybe not so alone, for a really long time.
A very long time.
In fact, the source material sort of kicks off with this strange, unsettling moment, doesn't it? Well, before we even properly meet Charlie Evans, it's the captain of that cargo ship, the Antares.
Right, trying desperately to get a warning through just static and a partial message. Definitely hooks you.
It really does. Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into some fascinating and honestly pretty unsettling source material. We're looking specifically at these transcript excerpts, these notes, detailing the arrival of a very, very unusual transfer passenger aboard at the Starship Enterprise.
Indeed. And on the surface, these sources describe what sounds like a routine mission. Rendezvous with a cargo vessel, the Antares, pick up one passenger. Simple.
Simple, right.
But from the moment this passenger steps aboard, and he's highlighted right there in the captain's initial description as unusual, things take a very sharp turn.
Yeah.
It moves really quickly from, social awkwardness to, to outright threat.
Absolutely. So the scene is set. Captain Kirk, he's maneuvering the Enterprise to meet the Antares. The mission, on paper, straightforward. Take aboard a 17-year-old castaway, Charlie Evans, sole survivor of a transport crash years ago on the planet Basis.
And the Antares captain seems eager just to hand him over and get underway quickly.
Yeah, the urgency itself is maybe a clue looking back. So the mission for us in this deep dive, drawing only from these sources you've provided, is to really try and understand who this Charlie Evans is.
Exactly. We want to piece together the circumstances of his survival, which sound almost unbelievable. Stranded at age 3, how does that even happen?
Right.
And then chart the increasingly bizarre, frankly terrifying events that unfold around him on the Enterprise. And ultimately figure out what these specific notes, these transcripts, actually reveal about his true nature.
Where did this power come from? What was its source? And the profound, just impossible challenges he presents to Kirk and the crew.
It's about peeling back the layers, isn't it? This seemingly simple, maybe awkward boy, and uncovering the immense power beneath. And the just impossible situation that creates for everyone.
Exactly. We're taking these notes, these glimpses into the encounter, and meticulously piecing together the crucial info, the surprising facts, the key insights. You're getting the shortcut, really, to being well-informed on this particular, very strange piece of space history, straight from the records. So yeah, buckle up.
Let's get started.
So Charlie arrives, beamed over from the Antares with their captain, Captain Raymart. And that initial introduction gives us our first look at his background. What do the sources tell us about his time on Thasis, those crucial early years?
Well, the details are quite stark, aren't they? Even presented so.
Yeah.
Matter of factly. Raymart confirms he's the sole survivor.
Yeah.
Transport crash, 14 years prior.
14 years?
Which means, he was alone on that planet from the age of 3. Just try to wrap your head around that level of isolation. A toddler. Suddenly, the only living human. Maybe the only living thing for miles, for years and years.
3 years old, utterly alone for 14 years. It's almost impossible to comprehend how a child, especially a toddler, could survive that. I mean, physically survive, let alone mentally. The source does give us some clues, though, right, about survival methods, particularly after the ship's food ran out.
Yes, it does. Kirk specifically asks him, how did you survive after the food concentrates, the ship's supplies, inevitably ran out? And Charlie's response is brief, almost simple. He says, after that, I found other things to eat, just growing around.
Just growing around.
Now, when you first read that, you might think, okay, foraging, finding berries, edible plants, maybe some native fauna, assuming there was any.
Yeah, the logical explanation.
But given everything else we learned from these sources, you have to ask, what does just growing around really imply? Was he simply finding things? Or was something else at play? Was he perhaps making things appear, making them grow instantly for him? That little bit of ambiguity right there at the start, it's key.
That's a chilling thought. And what about communication? He arrives speaking English, he can articulate thoughts. How did he learn language? Completely alone.
This is another one of those fascinating, slightly heartbreaking details from the source material. It gives you a glimpse into this incredibly strange upbringing. Charlie explains the ship's memory bank tapes still worked.
Ah, the computer logs.
Basically, yeah. Data logs, recorded information, maybe instructional materials, who knows. He learned to talk by listening to them and talking back. He puts it very simply, use just a few microtapes to learn from. It paints this incredibly lonely picture, doesn't it? This child, growing up with only recorded voices as his teachers, his companions, it's an education totally devoid of actual human interaction. No inflection, no body language, none of the subtle cues that shape our social understanding,
So he gets the vocabulary, the grammar, maybe.
but leaves these massive gaping holes in his social conditioning. He knows the words, but not the music, so to speak.
Right. And those gaps become immediately, sometimes jarringly, apparent the moment he steps onto the Enterprise bridge. His first reactions to just being around so many people are very telling.
Absolutely. He's overwhelmed, clearly. By the sheer scale of it, his very first question to Captain Kirk is, how many humans like me on this ship? He seems utterly fascinated, almost fixated on the number.
And Kirk tells him, 428 crew members. He even says it's like a whole city in space.
And imagine that, coming from utter solitude, or maybe just a handful of people in the Antares for a short time, to suddenly being in this bustling, vibrant community. It must have been mind-boggling, maybe even frightening on some level.
And his eagerness. The source quotes him saying, I'd like to see your ship now, all of it, the people and everything. There's this palpable hunger, isn't there? For connection, for seeing, for interacting. Like, he's desperate to make up for those 14 lost years.
Yes, a palpable eagerness that almost immediately bumps up against social norms, personal boundaries. Even Captain Raymart has to scold him during that initial briefing with Kirk. He says, you keep interrupting, Mr. Evans. That's considered wrong.
And Charlie's response?
Just a simple, almost reflexive, I'm sorry. It highlights that he knows there are rules, probably learned from those tapes.
Right, intellectually.
Exactly. But he lacks the ingrained understanding of why they exist. The empathy to understand how interruptions affect others, or just how to navigate a conversation smoothly. He's got the vocabulary, but none of the social grammar, none of the emotional intelligence that comes from years and years of subtle human feedback.
That desire for connection, but also the profound awkwardness and that lack of understanding boundaries, it comes through so strongly in his interactions with Yeoman Janice Rand. She seems to be one of the first crew members to really engage with him personally.
She shows him kindness, yes. The source mentions she brings him a present.
A present. Does it say what?
No, just a present. But Janice likes it. She says it's her favorite. But then she makes this interesting side comment. We don't have it in ship stores.
Okay, that's odd.
It's a small detail, easy to miss. But it's worth pausing on. Where did this gift come from? If it wasn't from the Enterprise's own inventory, did Charlie somehow produce it?
Like the food growing around?
Potentially. It's another one of those early subtle hints, isn't it? Like the survival food comic. They start to accumulate, suggesting something deeply unusual about him, beyond just social awkwardness.
And Charlie immediately seeks her out after this kind of gesture. He asks, can't you stay and talk a little more? There's this clear, almost desperate reaching out.
He's looking for that connection he's been starved of, absolutely.
Yeah.
But his inexperience, his emotional immaturity, it leads straight into deeply inappropriate, alarming behavior. The source describes a physical interaction. Janice has to tell him, it's okay, but just don't do it again after he, apparently. Well, the source says he just don't go around slapping girls on the body part not specified.
Oh, wow, okay.
And Charlie's response is immediate and chilling. I'm angry. Just like that. Flatly. And then, when Janice suggests he talk to Kirk or McCoy about learning how to behave, he simply states, I will.
Abrupt. No nuance.
None. It shows this fundamental, quite frightening misunderstanding of boundaries, consent, personal space. He doesn't grasp her discomfort or why his action was wrong. He only seems to register his own impulse, his own frustration, his own desire.
It's such a dramatic and immediate example of that lack of social conditioning you mentioned earlier. He has the urge, the need to connect, but absolutely zero understanding of how to do it appropriately, or safely, or respectfully.
Precisely. His emotional responses are raw, they're unfiltered, and entirely self-centered because he's never had to consider the impact of his actions on others, not in a sustained way. He lacks those years of learned behavior most adolescents acquire through constant negotiation, interaction, feedback.
And this is compounded by that vulnerability he shows, that desire to be liked. He explicitly tells Janice, doesn't he? Some on the other ship, they didn't like me. I tried. I'm trying to make people like me. I want them to like me.
Yes. It's poignant. You feel for him in that moment.
Yeah.
This deep-seated need for acceptance, which tragically becomes intertwined with something far, far more dangerous as these sources unfold.
And there are other little details right from the start that seem less significant at the time, but looking back, they're chilling. Like the Antares captain refusing any supplies. Kirk offers standard provisions, even asks about Saurian brandy.
And Raymart just says nothing. Firmly. Kirk is genuinely surprised he calls it a space first. A transport ship refusing supplies.
It is odd, isn't it? Cargo ships usually welcome resupply, especially after a long trip. Why refuse everything? Why the apparent haste to leave?
Combined with what happens later, the destruction of the Antares, that refusal takes on a much more ominous meaning in retrospect.
Yeah.
Was Raymart already scared? Was he trying to get away from Charlie as fast as humanly possible? Did he suspect something was terribly wrong, inherently dangerous about the boy?
The source doesn't spell it out.
No, but the implication is powerfully there looking back.
And linking back again to Charlie's comment to McCoy about survival. Found other things to eat, just growing around. At the time, maybe you dismiss it, innocent foraging.
But, given what we learn happens next, the chess game, Tina Lawton, the turkeys, you have to wonder, was he just picking berries? Or was he already unconsciously using some ability, making things grow instantly, maybe even transmuting matter to feed himself?
That's the critical question these early details force us to ask, isn't it? Especially in light of the later undeniable demonstrations of power. Was his survival purely luck and ingenuity? Or was he already unconsciously using the power he later demonstrates so terrifyingly?
These early details, they seem minor in isolation maybe, but they're threads. They start to unravel, weaving this picture that hints Charlie Evans is far more than just a lonely boy rescued from a deserted planet.
And that brings us squarely into some truly unsettling incidents. Things that happen very quickly aboard the Enterprise, incidents that shift this whole narrative. It stops being just a story about a socially awkward boy and becomes one about a rapidly escalating, potentially catastrophic threat.
And the most immediate, the most shocking is the fate of the Antares itself, the ship that just dropped Charlie off.
This is exactly where that subtle unease, those weird little details, just crystallize into outright alarm for the crew and for us reading the sources. Shortly after departing, the Enterprise gets this weak, distorted, almost cut-off transmission from Captain Raymart.
He's barely in range. Barely. And he says he has to warn them about something. The transmission cuts out before he can finish.
A warning. Left hanging. Ominous doesn't even cover it. And then Spock's probe scanners pick up something disturbing.
Debris. Debris, where the Antares should be. And the chilling confirmation follows swiftly from Spock. The debris is what's left of the Antares. Ramart's survey ship, 20 men aboard. Gone. Destroyed. With no reason apparent to Raymart before contact was lost.
Right after they drop Charlie off, the timing is just impossible to ignore. And the source includes Charlie's reaction when Kirk directly asks him about it. You think something happened to the Antares, Charlie? And Charlie says,
I don't know. Almost casual. Indifferent. But then Spock makes the crucial observation. The one that really connects Charlie to this catastrophe in the crew's minds.
what does Spock notice?
He points out to Kirk quite directly with that typical Vulcan precision.
Geek.
He seemed to know what happened to the Antares before we did.
Ah, before they confirmed it.
Yes, the timing. Charlie's apparent lack of surprise, maybe even his seeming foreknowledge. This is the first really concrete piece of evidence, undeniable in its timing and implications. It suggests Charlie isn't just a boy who survived alone. It implies a connection, a knowledge, maybe even a capability far beyond human norms.
And this is where that legend, the one mentioned early by Raymart about the planet Thasis, really comes into play in the crew's thinking. Spock brings it up, doesn't he, in that conversation with McCoy and Kirk, connecting the dots.
He does. Spock mentions the legend that Thasians exist on that planet in some form, hinting at non-corporeal life, maybe energy beings, and his logical argument is compelling, in its way.
What's his argument?
Charlie's survival, 14 years, especially after the ship's food ran out. Spock argues this strongly suggests there must be some intelligent form of life on Thasis that intervened. His reasoning is simple logic. Something must have helped Charlie survive where a human child alone absolutely couldn't.
Makes sense. McCoy pushes back, though, right? Admiral the pragmatist.
Right. McCoy offers the more conventional explanation. Charlie adapted. He could have eaten fruits, vegetables, native life, basic survival.
But Spock counters.
Spock counters that the initial probes of Thasis indicated very little life of any kind, though he does acknowledge logically that probes can be wrong, remote scans can be incomplete.
So it's not definitive proof, but it plants the seed.
Exactly. This discussion is pivotal in the source material. It introduces the possibility that Charlie's survival wasn't just incredible human resilience. It raises the very real possibility of intervention, interaction with a powerful, non-human entity from Thasis, the legendary Thasians. It shifts the whole context of everything the crew is observing.
It's not just about a strange boy anymore.
No, it's about a strange boy potentially imbued with alien power.
And then The manifestations of this unusual power start happening, undeniably, dramatically. The sources give us several concrete, escalating examples. The three-dimensional chess game with Spock is one of the earliest, and it's telling.
Yes. Spock, renowned for his intellect, his grasp of logic, is explaining the rules of 3D chess. Charlie seems almost dismissive. Know what it is, let's play.
Cocky. Or just knowledgeable in a weird way.
Hard to say initially. But then Spock identifies a mistake in Charlie's move. A move that logically should lead to a loss for Charlie. And Charlie immediately responds with absolute certainty, no, it wasn't, checkmate.
Checkmate. Just like that. After making a supposed mistake.
Instantly, Spock, the master strategist, defeated by a move he identified as flawed, by someone who supposedly just watched games on tapes. It implies Charlie didn't just play the game, he altered the game, manipulated the board, the pieces, maybe reality itself, to get the outcome he wanted, instantly.
That's not playing chess, that's cheating with physics.
It's a clear early demonstration of power over physical reality, over the very structure of the game. Subtle, maybe, compared to what comes later, but undeniable.
And it escalates quickly from that subtle manipulation to something far more direct and alarming. The disappearance of Tina Lawton, that's shocking, undeniable.
This incident is a direct result of that clash we talked about.
Yeah?
Charlie's extreme social immaturity crashing head-on with his emerging, or maybe increasingly uncontrolled, power. Kirk, trying to help him socialize, introduces him to Tina, a girl his own age. Thinking, okay, maybe they'll connect.
A reasonable idea.
Seems like it. But Charlie immediately fixates on Yeoman Rand again, wants to talk to her alone, dismisses Tina with this cutting, objectifying comment, I don't need her, she's just a girl.
Ouch, rough.
Janice, rightly, scolds him, tells him he's being rude, dismissive. She leaves briefly, maybe to talk to Tina or just cool off. And when she returns, Tina's gone, vanished.
Just gone.
Gone. The security man guarding the area is stunned, terrified. He reports what he saw, or rather, what Charlie made him experience. He's gone.
Yeah.
He made me do it. He laughed at me.
He made Tina disappear. And somehow affected the guard, too. Made him complicit or forget.
That's the terrifying implication. From the guard's reaction and Charlie's own explanation later, Charlie attributes his actions, here and elsewhere, to feeling rejected or mocked. He has things like, don't laugh at me, and referring to the guard, he made me do it. He laughed at me.
So being laughed at, feeling dismissed, that's a trigger.
It seems to be. A perceived threat? Or maybe just an unbearable frustration that activates this power, seemingly involuntarily at times. He just makes whatever's bothering him go away. It connects directly back to what he said about the Antares crew not liking him. His deep-seated need for acceptance is so pathologically strong that rejection, or even the perception of it, leads to immediate, destructive, reality-altering consequences for others.
This is where the power moves from, altering chess pieces to direct, terrifying interference with people's existence. And the sources show it keeps escalating rapidly. Security reports that all phaser weapons have disappeared.
Yes, just vanished. The crew's primary defense against a physical threat. Gone.
That's a major escalation.
Huge. He's not just making individuals disappear anymore. He's disarming the entire ship, removing their ability to protect themselves. It shows a rapidly increasing scope. Maybe a more deliberate application of his abilities, although still seemingly driven by his unpredictable emotional state.
And then there's that strange, almost comical report from the galley. Synthetic meatloaf.
Suddenly turns into real turkeys, in the ovens. Ready for Thanksgiving, apparently.
It is almost funny compared to disappearing people or weapons.
But it demonstrates the exact same core ability, doesn't it? Altering matter, just like the chess game. Potentially like his survival food. As Spock later notes, the Thasians are rumored to have the power to transmute objects, change one substance into another. This seemingly random act aligns perfectly with that rumored ability.
Why turkeys, though? Any idea?
Well, the source does mention crew members talking about it being Thanksgiving, wishing they had real turkey. It suggests Charlie might have overheard this mundane human longing and just made it happen. A strange mix of maybe wanting to please or just showing off, combined with wielding immense power arbitrarily.
So the evidence is just piling up, quickly, undeniably. Knowing about the Antares, altering the chess game, making Tina disappear, removing the weapons, transmuting food, something is clearly very, very wrong. And it's directly, terrifyingly connected to Charlie Evans.
Exactly. These incidents move way beyond just unusual. They're deeply unsettling, clearly dangerous. The crew realizes they're dealing with a force they don't understand, a power beyond their experience, beyond their capability to control, and it's all driven by the unpredictable emotional state of a traumatized, isolated, profoundly immature adolescent. It's a terrifying combination.
As these strange and dangerous incidents stack up, the focus for the crew really shifts, doesn't it? To confronting Charlie, trying to understand what's happening, and, well, trying to survive. The sources show this leads to some direct, really high-stakes confrontations and desperate attempts to manage an increasingly unstable situation.
Absolutely. And one of the most fraught, most revealing threads here is Charlie's continued, intense fixation on Yeoman Rand.
It becomes obsessive.
Completely. His feelings for her are clearly intense, overwhelming, but also utterly misguided, fueled by that profound isolation and his total lack of understanding of human relationships, especially romantic ones. The source captures his desperate attempts to express this in really raw, unfiltered terms. He tells her things like, "If I had the whole universe, I'd give it to you."
Wow. Grandiose.
And also, "I see you. I feel like I'm hungry all over." Hungry. Do you know how that feels? It's powerful, almost poetic in this expression of raw need, but it's completely devoid of any understanding of what love or connection truly means between two people. He's articulating a primal longing, but without any healthy emotional framework.
And Janice, understandably, is frightened by the intensity, the possessiveness, his complete disregard for her boundaries. She goes to Kirk, doesn't she? Expressing her fear, her desperate need for help.
She does. She says, "I've seen the look before, and if something isn't done, sooner or later, I'm going to have to hurt him. Tell him to leave me alone." She recognizes the potential danger in his obsession, his lack of control.
She sees where it could lead.
She sees the potential for violence or harm. Maybe not even deliberately from Charlie, but from her own need to defend herself against his intrusive behavior. She's reaching a breaking point. Kirk acknowledges how serious it is, tells her, "Yes, young man, I'll talk to him."
But talking doesn't seem to work here.
No. It highlights the impossible position they're in. Trying to protect Charlie from himself, protect the crew from Charlie, deal with this power they don't grasp, all while navigating the volatile, unmanaged emotions of a teenager with godlike abilities.
And Kirk talking to him doesn't resolve it with Janice. Charlie confronts her again, in her quarters, ignoring a locked door.
Yes, the source quotes him issuing this chilling demand. "Don't ever lock your door on me again, Janice."
That's terrifying. Power overriding basic physical laws, basic personal boundaries.
And he declares his intense, possessive love for her again, offers her anything. Janice tries desperately to make him understand, tells him straight, "Get out." And then, crucially, "You don't know what the word means. Love, connection."
And Charlie's response?
Chilling. "Then show me." It's that moment where his overwhelming need, his possessiveness, just completely overrides any concept of consent, rejection, personal autonomy.
And then, what happens to Janice?
Horrifyingly, the source indicates she disappears, just like Tina. Later, Charlie asks Kirk, in this completely twisted perception of events, "Why did she do that? I loved her, but she wasn't nice at all."
He thinks he was wronged.
He genuinely seems to believe he was the victim. Wronged by her rejection. It shows this complete inversion of reality and responsibility in his mind. He cannot process rejection. His reaction to not getting what he wants is to simply make the obstacle, the person, disappear.
It's horrifying and deeply tragic in a twisted way. He can't process rejection, can't understand others have agency, boundaries, and his response is just erasure. Kirk tries, though, repeatedly, desperately it seems, to guide Charlie, to teach him basic human interaction, self-control.
He really does. Kirk tries to explain fundamental concepts, how to treat women, emphasizes gentleness, respect, and crucially, mutual feelings. It's how the girl feels, too. But Charlie seems utterly unable, or maybe unwilling, to grasp this nuance, this idea that another person's feelings matter as much as his own.
He just focuses on himself.
He focuses only on whether he could somehow make Janice love him, as if it were a technical problem to be solved by power or force of will.
Kirk also tries to teach him practical things, right? Like self-defense.
Yeah, demonstrating how to fall, a shoulder roll, basic physical skills. But Charlie refuses point blank. "I don't want to do that." It demonstrates his ingrained reliance on his power over human methods.
Why bother learning to fall if you can just not fall? Or make the ground soft?
Exactly. Kirk notes it makes teaching him anything the human way incredibly difficult. It shows Charlie's resistance to learning things that require effort, practice, maybe involve vulnerability or physical limitations. He has the shortcut, his power, and sees no need for the slower, harder human way.
And Kirk tries maybe the most fundamental lesson of human existence. That you can't always get what you want. Life has limits. He tells Charlie in this moment of real, almost fatherly exasperation and wisdom.
Charlie, there are a million things in this universe you can have, and there are a million things you can't have. It's no fun facing that, but that's the way things are.
Such a core truth. How does Charlie react?
His reply is desperate, almost childlike. Well, then what am I going to do? And Kirk's advice, born of years facing impossible odds himself, is simply hang on tight and survive. Everybody does.
Wow.
And Charlie's final reply in that exchange, it captures the profound tragedy of his situation perfectly. Everybody, Charlie, me too. I'm trying, but I don't know how.
He wants to. He wants to fit in, wants connection.
He wants to be human. But he utterly lacks the tools, the experience, and critically, he possesses this immense, dangerous power he can't control or understand in a social context. He's trying to navigate human life with alien abilities and absolutely no instruction manual.
And as his frustration mounts, his control over the ship and the crew just increases rapidly. He refuses to let the ship change course, right? They want to divert from Colony 5, their destination, but he stops them.
Yes. He states with absolute finality, you can't do that. I want to get to Colony 5 as soon as we can. An alarming demonstration of his power extending beyond altering matter or people to controlling the vessel itself. He's effectively hijacked a starship.
And then he starts playing with the crew.
Manipulating them. For his amusement, maybe to alleviate his boredom. Making Spock recite poetry, making the navigators sing. His comment during this is incredibly telling, revealing the shallow, immature motivation. Oh, I can make him do anything, whirl around, laugh, anything. And then, don't you think he's funny? I think he's funny.
Using ultimate power for petty amusement, treating people like puppets.
Shows the immaturity, the potential cruelty. He freezes a security guard who has a mean look, presumably because the guard wasn't smiling or showed some negative emotion, and then changes it to a happy look.
The arbitrariness is terrifying. He can just decide what people look like, what they do, based on his whim, his mood.
And he's also shown blocking or creating subspace messages, cutting off their communication with the outside world, isolating the ship completely. He tells Kirk with this clear sense of control, "It's my game, Captain. You have to find out."
So he isolates them, cuts off any chance of calling for help or even warning Colony 5 about what's coming their way. He's consolidating control, removing external options.
Exactly. It all comes to a head in that briefing room discussion. Kirk, Spock, McCoy. They finally pool all the evidence, everything they've seen, everything these sources detail, and they define the core, impossible problem they are facing.
What's the consensus?
They confirm, based on all these incidents, the presence of power aligning with that Thasian legend, the ability to transmute matter, render things invisible, directly affect people's minds and bodies. They also confirm, apparently through McCoy's medical scans, that Charlie is physically human. The development of his fingers and toes exactly matches Earth norms.
So human biology.
But possessed of this profound non-human power. They lay out the danger explicitly, starkly. They're dealing with the emotional instability, the impulsiveness of a normal adolescent. Charlie, with the power he has, is short-tempered because he doesn't understand. He wants nothing happens fast enough. His adolescent impatience, his lack of understanding, are now coupled with effectively unlimited power.
And the Antares. Do they conclude he was responsible?
The horrifying probability is openly discussed and accepted, indicating his total disregard for human life. McCoy offers that slight defense, trying to contextualize it. He doesn't understand what life is. He's a boy.
Which is tragically true. He lacks the framework of empathy forged through shared experience, through living with others.
But as the others recognize, understanding the cause doesn't negate the scale of the threat. The critical decision becomes clear. Unavoidable. We can't take him with us to Earth Colony 5.
The risk is too high.
Astronomical? They consider the potential devastation. Can you imagine what he'd do in an open, normal environment? Kirk summarizes the impossible situation, really encapsulating the core problem these sources present. He's a boy in a man's body trying to be an adult, with the adolescent in him getting in the way, and with a weapon in him which could destroy you or anyone anywhere on this ship.
That's the key moment, isn't it? The so what?
It is. The full, terrifying scale of the danger posed by Charlie's uncontrolled power combined with his emotional immaturity becomes undeniable. The crew is trapped on a ship with a walking, talking, reality-altering weapon, a ticking time bomb of adolescent frustration and cosmic power.
Faced with this impossible, life-threatening situation, the crew has to find some way to survive. To neutralize the threat Charlie represents, preferably without, destroying the boy himself if possible. And the courses make it pretty clear that the primary burden for navigating this falls directly onto Captain Kirk.
Yes. That briefing room discussion concludes with the understanding that Kirk is the one authority he respects, the one human Charlie has shown any consistent deference towards, however limited that might be.
So it's all on Kirk.
The agreement among the command staff is explicit. The struggle must remain between you and him, should any of us interfere. It basically isolates Kirk, places this immense, terrifying burden of managing Charlie, of finding some solution, directly and almost solely on his shoulders. It's a recognition that conventional force is useless here.
Right, phasers are gone anyway.
Exactly. And that multiple people trying to intervene could just trigger worse, more catastrophic reactions from Charlie. Kirk is the only one with even a slim chance to reason, maybe distract, somehow outmaneuver him.
Before they can really formulate a full plan, though, or maybe as part of setting the stage for whatever comes next, Kirk confronts Charlie directly about the Antares. The source quotes Kirk asking that pointed question, "Are you responsible for what happened to the Antares, Charlie?"
And Charlie's confession. It's chillingly matter-of-fact, devoid of any real remorse for the 20 lives lost. Yes, he says, there was a warped baffle plate on the shield of their energy pile. I made it go away. It would have blown up anyway.
He made it go away. He sabotaged their engine.
That's the implication. And then he offers this disturbing rationalization. Well, they weren't nice to me. They wanted to get rid of me. They don't now.
Oh my God. He destroyed them because they weren't nice and wanted him transferred.
It starkly demonstrates that complete lack of empathy. His view of human life is utterly disposable when it inconveniences him or rejects him. It shows that terrifying link between his emotional state feeling slighted, rejected, and his devastatingly destructive power.
Kirk's assessment in that moment is just stark, captures the terrifying reality. You're in the hands of an adolescent.
A true, terrifying summation. An adolescent with godlike power who is now actively controlling the starship. With Charlie having taken full control, bending the ship systems to his will, conventional options are just gone. Kirk even acknowledges his own vulnerability. Spock asks if Kirk has any special immunity left.
And Kirk says,
"Not anymore. Push far enough, he'd send you off to oblivion too." They are all equally at risk now. Charlie's slight deference to Kirk is gone, or at least unreliable.
So they devise a desperate plan, born out of having almost no options left. Spock notes Charlie hasn't gotten rid of anyone else yet since taking over the ship and isolating them.
Right, which suggests maybe, just maybe, he's reaching the limits of his power. Maybe controlling an entire starship, every system, is actually taxing him.
So the idea, the gamble, is to deliberately push those limits even further.
Exactly. Tax his power, Spock suggests. Turn on every device on the ship, every circuit, every light, all of it.
A massive system-wide power drain, an overload.
The hope, the theory, is that if they push the ship's systems to their absolute maximum draw, it will require Charlie to expend tremendous energy, tremendous concentration, just to maintain his control over everything. And in that state, he'll be vulnerable.
And Kirk's role.
Kirk's crucial role is to distract him while he's fighting that overload. Keep his attention fragmented. Keep him from focusing solely on maintaining control. The source mentions an initial idea involving Spock and McCoy trying to tranquilize them during this.
But that doesn't happen.
Events seem to move too fast, or the plan pivots. The core becomes taxing his power, and Kirk distracting him, confronting him.
McCoy's assessment of this plan is blunt, isn't it? Pragmatic, highlighting the lack of alternatives.
He says, "If we don't try, Doctor, he'll get rid of us anyway," and states plainly, "There is no choice, gentlemen. None at all."
It underscores the sheer desperation. It's not a good plan.
It's the only plan. It's a massive gamble based on the fragile hope that Charlie's power, vast and reality-altering as it is, does have limits. That he isn't truly omnipotent. That controlling a large, complex starship is a significant drain, if they're wrong.
If they're wrong, this could just trigger him to destroy the ship instantly.
Precisely.
The confrontation happens on the bridge, the heart of the ship. Charlie is sitting in the captain's chair, literally embodying his control. Kirk faces him, and his command is direct, challenging. "Get out of my chair, Charlie, and get out of it now."
Charlie is confident, though. Arrogant, maybe. He asserts his dominance. "I've got your ship, Captain." But Kirk pushes back, implementing their desperate strategy. The ship's systems start whining, overloading.
While Kirk simultaneously confronts him verbally, trying to break his concentration, his will.
Exactly. Kirk challenges him directly, questioning his ability to maintain this level of control. Maybe Charlie, but I don't think you can handle anymore. He states, I think you've reached your limit and can't take on one more thing. Deliberately pushing Charlie's psychological buttons, challenging his power at the very moment it's being taxed physically by the ship overload.
Kirk really leans into it, pushes him harder, reminds him of the danger he represents, says he could have sent him away before but didn't. But now Charlie is forcing his hand. He stares him down, lays out the stakes.
You're going to have to take me out. Don't push me. I've got my ship and I want it back. I want my crew back, whole. I have to break your neck to do it. Don't push me. It's incredibly tense, raw. A sheer test of wills at the absolute breaking point.
Kirk is deliberately cornering him, pushing him to his emotional and power limits under maximum duress, risking everything himself, the ship, to test if Charlie's power can be overloaded or distracted.
He's gambling everything on Charlie being unable to simultaneously maintain control of the entire ship, resist the system overload screaming around them, and withstand Kirk's direct, authority-challenging verbal assault. And in that moment of maximum strain, Charlie breaks.
He cries out.
Yes. In distress. I'm sorry. What? Stop it. I said stop it. The immense pressure, the strain on his power, it's too much. He can't handle it all. And the ship's systems, they immediately return to normal.
Navigation console is clear now. Ship is answering the helm. It worked. The desperate plan worked. Taxing his power while confronting him pushed him beyond his capacity, forced him, maybe involuntarily, to relinquish control.
A huge sigh of relief, you imagine, on that bridge.
But just as they regain control, just as the immediate crisis seems averted, something else happens. Something maybe expected, given Spock's earlier theory, but still...
Momentous.
Precisely. Right then, a message is received. On subspace frequency 3, that same channel linked to the Antares warning. It states simply, from Thasis.
Thasis. And then, sensors detect something off our starboard bow. It's intangible. Deflectors show no solid substance yet. It's clearly there.
The arrival of the Thasians themselves, the source of Charlie's power, according to the legend, according to Spock's theory, and Charlie's reaction.
Immediate. Absolute terror.
Not relief, not, my people are here.
No, terror, no. Please don't let him take me. I can't live with him anymore. He immediately turns back to the humans he just terrorized, pleading desperately. The vulnerable boy from the beginning is back in full force. My friends, you said you were my friends. Remember when I came aboard? I want to go home. Take me home.
Wow, the whiplash. From tyrant to terrified child.
It lays the core of his tragedy bare, doesn't it? He wants human connection, acceptance, friendship. Despite having been given this immense power by these alien beings he now fears.
And he explains why he fears them. In stark terms.
Yes, confirming the crew's, or maybe just Spock's, suspicions about their nature. He cries out, I can't even touch them. Janice, presumably seeing her return now, they can't feel. Not like you. They don't love.
So powerful, yes, but cold, detached, emotionless.
That's the crucial insight he provides, from his experience living with them. He perceives them as powerful, maybe even caring in their own way, but devoid of the emotional connection, the warmth, the capacity for love he briefly experienced and profoundly craved from humans, especially Janice. The very power that let him survive makes him incompatible with the species that granted it, and makes him fundamentally different, dangerously different from the humans he wants acceptance from.
And the Thasian then takes form to communicate.
Yes. It appears, stating, I have taken my form centuries ago so that I may communicate with you. And they reveal the crucial, missing piece about Charlie's origin. We gave him the power so he could live.
Confirming Spock's theory, it wasn't innate, it was granted. A survival tool.
Exactly. They acknowledged the tragic cost of his escape from their stewardship, let's call it. We did not realize until too late that the boy had gone, and we are saddened that his escape cost the lives of the first ship and we could not help them. They take responsibility in a detached sort of way for the Antares' destruction.
And they demonstrate their own power by fixing things on the Enterprise.
Yes. But we have returned your people and your ship to you. Everything is as it was. Janice is back. The weapons are back. Presumably, Tina Lawton is also returned unharmed, although the source just gives that blanket statement everything's back to normal. They can manipulate reality on a grand scale, instantly, effortlessly, it seems.
Why take him back, then? If they can fix his mistakes.
Their reasoning is presented as cold, logical, unavoidable fact, devoid of human sentiment. The boy belongs with his own kind. They state flatly it's impossible for him to live with humans.
Impossible? Why? Couldn't they train him?
They acknowledge they could potentially train him to control the power. But the risk to humanity is simply too great. Their chilling assessment. He will use it always.
Mm.
And he would destroy you and your kind, or you would be forced to destroy him to save yourselves.
Brutal.
It is. Coexistence between Charlie and humans is unsustainable, because the potential for catastrophic, world-ending harm is always present, given Charlie's adolescent nature, his lack of control, the sheer scale of his power. The only safe option, from their perspective, is removal.
So, despite Charlie's desperate, heartbreaking pleas, oh, please don't let them take me, they want to stay, 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 despite him even turning back to the humans he'd just terrorized and saying, I want to go with you, help me.
Despite all that, the Thasians take him. They appear, they explain their cold logic, and they simply take him away. A final tragic moment of him reaching out for that human connection he craved, immediately followed by being pulled away to a fate he clearly fears more than anything.
A life with beings who are powerful, but by his own account, emotionally sterile, and that very last sensory input from him, recorded in the source material.
It's so strange, unsettling, unexplained.
Heat, 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 heat. What could that even mean? The feeling of being taken, transported by beings he can't touch. Is it their true nature? Energy, heat.
The source just leaves it there. A lingering, unsettling, enigmatic question mark. A final strange note in Charlie's incredibly tragic story.
And then he's gone.
Gone. The ship, the crew, instantly returned to normal. The terrifying threat neutralized. But at the cost of Charlie being taken back to the Thasians, back to a life of immense power, but by his own desperate description, one potentially devoid of the warmth, the connection, the love he so desperately sought among humans.
Wow, okay. This deep dive into the sources you've provided, it paints this remarkable, terrifying, and ultimately just tragic picture, doesn't it? Charlie Evans' story. It's one of profound, unimaginable isolation meeting immense, uncontrollable power.
The sources show, with chilling clarity, how his adolescent mind, totally unequipped to handle that kind of power, totally unequipped to integrate into society after that level of isolation became a danger. Not just to himself, but to everyone around him. His emotional needs, his frustrations, they were just amplified by this reality-altering capability he couldn't understand or control.
It's such a stark look at how quickly unchecked power can become destructive, even in someone who claims they only want to be nice, who yearns for acceptance. The moment he faced the complexities of human interaction, rejection, or just hitting a boundary he didn't like.
His desire to be liked was tragically coupled with the power to just eliminate anyone who didn't comply or who frustrated him.
The conclusion presented in the sources. It's undeniably tragic, but from the crew's perspective, unavoidable, wasn't it? Coexistence between Charlie and humans was deemed impossible.
The inherent, unpredictable danger of his power, combined with his inability to fully control it or understand its implications for others, it just made his presence unsustainable. The potential for accidental or emotionally triggered destruction was simply too great.
And the Thasians themselves, they represent this completely different kind of existence, don't they? Immensely powerful, capable of granting life, undoing damage on a cosmic scale.
But seemingly devoid of that emotional depth, that capacity for connection and love that Charlie craved, and briefly experienced with the humans. His force returned to them, despite his terror, despite his pleas for human friendship. It's just a poignant, deeply lonely fate for the boy who just wanted to be liked.
What stood out most to you, looking through these notes again?
For me, it's the terrifying speed at which his power manifested and escalated, and how directly it was tied to his raw, unprocessed emotional state, his frustration, his desire for acceptance, his inability to cope with rejection. These very human adolescent feelings became instantaneous triggers for reality-altering events just because he had the power to act on them, however unintentionally maybe at first.
Yeah, and for me, it's that moment of vulnerability Kirk manages to bring out of him, just before the end. I'm trying, but I don't know how. It humanizes him just enough right before the Thasians take him to make his eventual forced departure truly heartbreaking. Despite the immense danger he posed, he really was trying to navigate a human world with alien tools he just couldn't manage, desperate for a connection that his own power ultimately made impossible.
A profound tragedy all around.
So that's our deep dive into this fascinating, unsettling source material about Charlie Evans and the Enterprise's encounter. It's a really complex story about isolation, about power, responsibility, and the profound challenges of integrating into society, especially when you've got the universe literally at your fingertips, but absolutely no understanding of how to hold back.
And pulled directly from the provided notes and transcript excerpts, this account offers a unique perspective, doesn't it? On that intersection of immense power and human-like maturity, or in this case, the devastating lack thereof.
It really makes you think. Here's something to consider. The Thasians gave Charlie the power so he could survive on their world. Does that make them ultimately responsible for the catastrophic consequences that followed? The Antares, the terror on the Enterprise? Or was it just an unavoidable outcome once a being with that kind of power, even if granted for survival, was exposed to a complex society he simply couldn't integrate with?
The tough question. What does this whole story say about the value or maybe the inherent danger of extreme power when it's paired with complex, human-like emotions, especially profound immaturity, completely devoid of social conditioning?
Yeah. And maybe turn it around. If you suddenly had that kind of reality-bending power after a lifetime totally alone, how would you even begin to learn to use it responsibly, safely, justly? Where would you even start? Something to mull over.
Definitely something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.